Lesson 55. From the Earth, Greetings. We'll talk about aliens in this lesson. 这一课我们来谈一谈外星人。But first, listen to the text and answer this question. Which life forms are most likely to develop on a distant planet? 在遥远的行星上，最有可能存活下来的生命形态是什么？
Recent developments in astronomy have made it possible to detect planets in our own Milky Way and in other galaxies. This is a major achievement because, in relative terms, planets are very small and do not emit light. Finding planets is proving hard enough, but finding life on them will prove infinitely more difficult. The first question to answer is whether a planet can actually support life. In our own solar system, for example, Venus is far too hot, and Mars is far too cold to support life. Only the Earth provides ideal conditions, and even here it has taken more than 4 billion years for plant and animal life to evolve. Whether a planet can support life depends on the size and brightness of its star, that is, its sun. Imagine a star up to 20 times larger, brighter, and hotter than our own sun. A planet would have to be a very long way from it to be capable of supporting life. Alternatively, if the star was small, the life-supporting planet would have to have a close orbit round it and also provide the perfect conditions for life forms to develop. But how would we find such a planet? At present, there is no telescope in existence that is capable of detecting the presence of life. The development of such a telescope will be one of the great astronomical projects of the 21st century. It is impossible to look for life on another planet using Earth-based telescopes. Our own warm atmosphere and the heat generated by the telescope would make it impossible to detect objects as small as planets. Even a telescope in orbit round the Earth, like the very successful Hubble telescope, would not be suitable because of the dust particles in our solar system. A telescope would have to be as far away as the planet Jupiter to look for life in outer space, because the dust becomes thinner the further we travel towards the outer edges of our own solar system. Once we detected a planet, we would have to find a way of blotting out the light from its star, so that we would be able to see the planet properly and analyze its atmosphere. In the first instance, we would be looking for plant life rather than little green men. The life forms most likely to develop on a planet would be bacteria. It is bacteria that have generated the oxygen we breathe on Earth. For most of the Earth's history, they have been the only form of life on our planet. As Earth dwellers, we always cherish the hope that we will be visited by little green men, and that we will be able to communicate with them. But this hope is always in the realms of science fiction. If we were able to discover lowly forms of life like bacteria on another planet, it would completely change our view of ourselves. As Daniel Goldin of NASA observed, finding life elsewhere would change everything. No human endeavor or thought would be unchanged by it.
After listening, did you answer the question? Right. The life forms most likely to develop on a distant planet would be bacteria and plant life. This text starts with a major achievement in astronomy. We are now able to detect other planets in the Milky Way and other galaxies. And then the text leads to the focus, which is whether there's life on other planets. The second paragraph tells us what are the necessary conditions for life to exist on other planets, and why we are unable to find out if there is such a place. Why can't we do this? The third paragraph explains that we don't have a suitable telescope. And then it is followed up with some hypotheses about what would happen if there's really life detected on other planets. Whatever would happen, it would certainly change everything about us, human beings. Okay, now we'll look at some language points. Recent developments in astronomy. Astronomy is the subject of science, 天文学. And then later in the text, it gives us the adjective form of astronomy. Astronomical projects. So astronomical is the adjective. The expert in astronomy is an astronomer, 天文学家. Because in relative terms, planets are very small. In relative terms means relatively. Relative, we know, means comparing to other things. 相对的. Let's look at some examples. Since I got the job, I've been living in relative comfort. In relative terms, Britain was weak in the 20th century. In relative terms means that it was stronger before, but weaker in the 20th century. Will prove infinitely more difficult. Infinitely here means a lot more difficult. Infinitely great. Here infinitely means extremely great. 无限的. Infinitely better. Here it means the same as the one in the text. Much better. A planet can actually support life. Support here means to provide the necessary conditions so that life can exist. Let's look at more examples. His brother supported him when he was at college. Support somebody means to provide a living for somebody. 养活什么人? The land is so poor that it cannot support any crops. 长不了任何庄稼. Support means to provide necessary conditions for crops to grow. Imagine a star up to 20 times larger, brighter, and hotter than our own sun. Up to means as much as, or no more than. Look at more examples. Up to 300 people were on board the ship. 船上多达300人. We teach learners up to intermediate level in our center. 直到中级水平. A planet would have to be a very long way from it to be capable of supporting life. Be capable of means having the ability to do something. Let's look at more examples. His wife is a very capable woman. When you use capable as an adjective, it means a very able person. 很能干的. Only the Democratic Party is capable of running the country now. Only this party has the ability. But you can also use be capable of to describe something negative. For example, when he's drunk, he's capable of saying rude things, which means he is more likely to say rude things. Alternatively, if the star were small, the life-supporting planet would have to have a close orbit round it. Alternatively means instead, as the other possibility. For example, we could go to the Italian restaurant, or alternatively, we could try the new Indian place. Means both these can be choices, or instead. There is no telescope in existence. In existence means that exists now. 现存的. For example, this photograph is the only record of the event in existence. 就是 关于这个事件保存下来的唯一记录。Detecting the presence of life. Presence is the noun form of present, means existence, 是否有生命存在。I'll give you more examples. He's usually quite polite in my presence. He's usually polite when I am there. The contract was signed in the presence of 2 witnesses. The contract was signed when 2 witnesses were present. Using Earth-based telescopes. Earth-based means based on Earth. It's an adjective. Based can also be used together with other nouns, meaning based in certain places. For example, a London-based company. The base of the company is in London. Land-based missiles. Those missiles which are fired from the ground. The heat generated by the telescope. Generate is a formal or specialized verb, means cause or produce. For example, there has been a lot of publicity generated by this event, caused by this event. The project will generate the company's revenue. The project will make possible that the company earns more. The equipment may generate enough electricity for 2,000 homes. 发电. To find a way of blotting out the light from its star. To blot out means to stop the light from coming through. 遮住，挡住光. For example, a dark cloud suddenly blotted out the sun. We can also use the expression figuratively, means avoid thinking about something. For example, she tried her best to blot out all her memories of the accident. She tried very hard to avoid thinking about the accident. So that we would be able to see the planet and analyze its atmosphere. Analyze, 分析. Its noun form is analysis, and adjective is analytical, which means good at analyzing, or having the feature of analyzing. 具有分析性的或者分析力很强的. Look at this example. His report analyzes the effect of the policy upon middle-class families. In the first instance, we would be looking for plant life. In the first instance here means in the first place, 首先. For example, in the first instance, we had better make sure the calculations are correct. Firstly, first of all. We know that instance, the basic meaning is example. For instance means for example. Look at one more example. We hope you would meet our requirements in this instance. Here, in this instance means in this case, in this situation. As earth dwellers, dwellers refer to people who live in a certain place. Here it refers to all of us who live on the planet Earth. We have learned before, the city dwellers, those people who live in the city, or country dwellers. But this hope is always in the realms of science fiction. The realms of science fiction means the fields covered in science fiction. The basic meaning of realm is kingdom, 王国. For example, in a realm as large as medieval Germany, the king faced a huge task. But figuratively, it means a certain field or area. For example, she found great pleasures in the realm of history. Or, the change in people's attitudes will gradually move from the realm of theory into that of practice. 从理论领域转到实践领域。If we were able to discover lowly forms of life, lowly means low in position of a range or of a rank, or humble, not respected. Here, the lowly forms of life means at the bottom of biological forms. I'll give you an example. His first job was a lowly porter in the hotel. Lowly means the job of a porter is low in rank. No human endeavor or thought would be unchanged by it. Endeavor means effort or attempt. For example, crossing the North Pole on foot was an amazing feat of human endeavor. 是人类努力的一个惊人奇迹。It can also be used as a verb. For example, engineers are still endeavoring to locate the source of the problem. They are still trying hard to find the source of the problem. This text deals with a rather unfamiliar topic to us, which is about the outer space and the distant planets. So comparison with the Earth and our familiar system is necessary. Let's look at how these comparisons are made. Venus is far too hot and Mars is far too cold to support life. This is a familiar way to stress the comparison. Far too. Finding planets is proving hard enough, but finding life on them will prove infinitely more difficult. Using the sentence pattern, this is hard enough, but this is infinitely more difficult, is to stress the difficulty, especially the word infinitely. Imagine a star up to 20 times larger, brighter, and hotter than our own sun. In comparison with far too and infinitely, here we have a very precise limit, so that the comparison is clearly made. Up to 20 times larger, brighter, and hotter. A telescope would have to be as far away as the planet Jupiter, because the dust becomes the thinner the further we travel towards the outer edges of our own solar system. The distance is described with as. Again, we're familiar with this structure. There's a further comparison, which is becomes thinner the further we travel. If put into a more familiar pattern, it could be expressed as because the further we travel towards the outer edges, the thinner the dust becomes. Coming back to the text itself, the title of this text is From the Earth, Greetings, indicating that if there are indeed other life forms on the other planets or in the outer space, we would love to communicate with them and say hello to them. As the lonely beings in the universe, we human beings have always been fascinated by the possibility that there are other lives or beings existing in the outer space. They are called aliens. Scientists have been researching on this possibility. We as common people can only imagine them as the text says, little green men in strange shapes and with some abilities that we human beings do not possess. And strangely enough, in science fictions or in films, aliens are often pictured as more advanced life forms. They have the merits of human beings, but without the flaws of human beings. In a word, they are idealized human beings. But our feelings towards the aliens are quite mixed. Sometimes aliens are described as evil forces. They have a mission to destroy the Earth and human beings. they are pictured as our enemy. I guess this is natural enough, since we usually have fear and mistrust about everything unknown, strange, or alien. Okay, so much on the topic of aliens. See you next time.